Okay, so my guest today is Dr. Laurie V. She's a PhD. She's not a medical doctor, so I don't want anybody writing me at justjennypod@gmail.com like, ask Dr. Laurie V about my bellyache. That's not the kind of doctor you are. Laurie, welcome to my show. Tell me, what kind of PhD doctor are you?
Okay, I have a PhD in art and architectural history from Penn State. I'm a professional appraiser. I have museum experience and university teaching experience, as well as 25 years I've been an appraiser. So, personal property, art, antiques, collectibles, stuff,
It is
stuff.
so cool that you do this.
Yes,
And
it's very cool.
I found you because I wanted to find out about a print that I had and a couple of things. And first of all, I thought your personality is just infectious. So let's
Oh, you're
start
so
with
sweet.
that.
You're
And
very sweet.
yeah, and then your knowledge base and sort of confidence I thought was really cool, especially since like I know nothing. So like I look at a rug in my house. This morning I'm downstairs. I took a picture of a rug. I'm like, this thing could be worth something. My mother gave it to me 30 years ago. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Or things on my wall or whatever. And you just seem to know it. And so, how did that
It's
start?
it's all I do. I don't bake. I'm not married. I don't have kids. This is it. So,
This is the thing. This
um,
is what
I,
you love.
it is what I love.
And
I'm
dogs.
lucky to. I'm lucky. I'm very
Yeah.
lucky in that. I grew up with World War II parents. Everybody
Mhm.
was old, and I was young. So you kind of were like, okay, I guess we're gonna have to go with liking the old stuff because everything around you is old.
Mhm.
My parents were much older than all of my friends' parents. It just ended up that way. I was one of those surprise kids. And interestingly enough, I was interested in history, and art history was the beautiful objects that my family could not afford, just that simple. And I grew up near New Haven, Connecticut, near
Mhm.
Yale.
Mhm.
So Yale and its museums became a playground in a lot of ways because it was stuff that was unattainable but interesting. And because those objects told the story of history and of people, and it was really at times when, at times that weren't, of course, contemporary. So that's what happened. And I got a degree from Penn State in art history, my PhD in art history, and worked at museums and had the good fortune with art history. You've heard the statements about, what do you do with an art history degree? Well, I was
Totally.
I was very fortunate. I got to see the world's museums and
Yeah.
travel
Yeah.
and learn stuff and help people to understand the stuff in their house that they're walking by, what's
Right.
valuable, who would think it's valuable. Most people don't think it's valuable just because it's yours.
Right, right. And it's hard to know what's
Hard to know.
valuable and what's crap. That's
Right,
the other
right,
thing.
right, right.
It's like I was talking to my sister about this teeny tiny table that we grew up with when we lived, I mean, really 40, 45 years ago in a different town, a teeny tiny table. And I'm like, I love that table so much. And then we both laughed about it. We're like, it's probably worth $32.47. Like,
Right,
we have no gauge. We have no idea of
right,
anything. And
right.
even things like, I'm looking at, I mean, I used to have Beanie Babies. I don't think I have them anymore. I thought I had
Yeah,
a Diana baby. I don't think I do. We have
right.
things like, I just saw something the other day, and I can't remember exactly what I was just thinking of. But there's so much what we think of as trash, and you're saying you could sort of spot that needle in the haystack, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
spot a lot of treasures for people,
Yeah.
and I try to teach them, about establishing and identifying quality.
That's what
Because
I
if you
want to
can,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can understand that, that's really what you want to know. So there are categories that I tell people, I don't care what it is. I don't care if you don't like the way it looks, it's not your taste. If it's in one of these categories, just keep it. Keep it for me. Just keep it. Keep it for yourself because it's going to help you. So categories like fine art, right?
Mm.
Okay, so paintings and sculpture and things that may or may not be your taste, you should hang on to. The portrait of Anne Hildegard, she's hideous. I don't care. Keep it because could be valuable. That's one. Furniture. Typically, people are very quick to go, okay, let's get rid of the furniture. Let's take a look at the furniture before we let it go. So the furniture can have significant value. Most of us know that jewelry, precious metals, silver tea sets could have value, right? So that's the third one. So those are your top three. And if you think of the last time you were in a museum, what were you looking at? Paintings, jewelry, the crown jewels, and furniture, a funny chair.
Right.
All right. So
Right.
so that's basically what we want to start with. Then there's the fun stuff, right? the sports collectibles, the cookie jars, the china, the crystal, stuff, the Pez dispenser collection,
Right.
these kinds
Right.
of things that people will say, or movie posters, memorabilia, the stuff that relates to a particular time,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's the 1970s or the 1870s,
Right.
right? That relates to what's what. There's a reason why Fonzie's leather jacket is in the Smithsonian,
Right, because
right?
it's a font. Like I have a
The
giant,
font.
I have a poster, a framed movie poster the size of, I don't know, a wall, and
Yeah.
it says L'Alsacienne, and it's this girl with red hair and big eyes like that. And I have no idea if that means anything, and I've had it since the year like 2000 or something.
Typically, movie posters are graded, and typically movie posters are sort of like an A through F kind of deal, like your grades in school. So, but yeah, the movie posters definitely can have significant value, and I mean well over into the thousands.
Wow.
You know,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then some could be hundreds of thousands,
Sure.
depending on which
What it
era,
is.
which film, which
Yeah.
right, the condition, all these factors go into it. So I try to teach people in my classes and my website and blah 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 YouTube channel. What are those factors? Like for each individual category of object, what do you look for?
Yeah. So you're
So,
like a one woman Antiques Roadshow.
well, I've been doing this a long, long time. And I do have a broad knowledge of different objects, different categories of objects, because, you have to know all different types of objects.
Yeah.
I do have the things that people would say, oh, well, whether it's military collectibles or whether it's cookie jars or paintings or whatever it might be.
So like, because like if someone has, remember there was that old Martha Stewart catalog
Yes.
umpteen years ago.
Yes.
So I think it was around the year 1997 or 98 or 96. She had this green milk glass in the catalog, not the old milk glass, her catalog milk glass. And
Mhm.
I just kept buying it. So I have like tons of this super heavy milk glass in green from the now no longer catalog. Would that be worth
Right.
something 30 years later?
Yes, for a
Okay.
couple of reasons.
Okay.
First of all, it's who Martha Stewart is and how
Yeah.
important she is as a cultural icon. And people
Yeah.
might say, a cultural icon? Well, yeah, because she brought back in the late 80s through much of the 90s and even into today, she brought back this idea that home and what we do in our homes is important, and she basically is extremely important in many different ways. And the folks around her also quite important. Having said that,
Mm-hmm.
um, those items which relate to looking back at jadeite, right, and some of those collectible pieces that were in that catalog could have value. Most people would think what you think, Jenny. It's not that old. How could it be valuable?
Right.
But in fact, that's not the case because it relates to, again, a famous person who is known for these types of things. Now, if you said, oh, well, I have an object that has nothing to do with Martha Stewart, that was Martha Stewart's, right? Kind of thing. That's not going to be
That's
as
not
much.
the same thing, right? If
Not
it's identifiable to her, it's
right,
different
right.
from if it's not.
For example, now I'll give
Yes.
you a personal example. I
Yes.
have the first Martha Stewart Living magazine with her on it, and I have the
Wow.
last one with her on it. And I kept them both because she's a cultural icon.
Yes. Yes. No, and I know Martha, and she's great, and she's great, and she is a cultural icon, and I
Yeah,
like her a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
But I prior to ever knowing her, I had went on a tear of buying all of these things because I thought they were so cool looking, and they're so
Right,
heavy, they're so
right.
dense. Like,
Dense, good quality, right?
yes,
So this is what
yes.
you're looking for. And, a lot of what we see with many of the folks who I talk to who are young collectors, people go, 20-year-olds don't care about this. You'd be surprised
How many
at
do?
how, the Gen Zs and the millennials, those folks are saying, hey, Dr. Laurie, I follow you because I love costume jewelry, or I love, to collect pottery, or I love Native American pieces, or whatever it might be. And what's interesting about, that age group is that age group understands what quality is because they grew up with, everything's disposable, we'll
Everything
just throw
right.
everything out. So they
Right.
love antiques and they love vintage stuff. And it's really fascinating to see that coming back very, very strong. The internet has helped it too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Dr. Lori, so what about China in general? For someone listening, how do they know if their China's worth something? Because like I've done that thing where I went on replacements.com or replacementlimited.com and they're like, no one looked for this pattern. But I'm like, but this pattern's like a real pattern from
Right.
1962 from the
Right.
UK when it was England, or I don't even know what it was called then. But how do you know whether China is
Okay.
keep it or dump it?
Couple of things about China. There's usually a mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to look for particular things. One of the easiest things to look for, and I've taught this for a million years, take that plate, turn it over, look for bright white clay. The brighter and whiter the clay, the less the more purity there is in the actual clay. And then look for places where you see,
Yeah.
of course, the best clay deposits. Limoges, France,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Galway, Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
Staffordshire, England,
Mm-hmm.
Trenton, New Jersey, right? And people are going, Trenton, New
Trenton, New
Jersey.
Jersey.
Yes. So there are certain places where better china was made, right? So American china of the 1950s, 60s, that neck of the woods, vintage pieces, always good. Usually they have gold banding around the rim. Sometimes they'll have a scallop shape. That could be part. Porcelain from Limoges, France, always good. Haviland and Company, Jean Pouillet, any of those particular makers, very, very popular also. The marks are going to be important, but the pattern's important. Is your pattern hand painted? If you can't tell, look at it and look at the individual brush strokes on those little pink, they're usually little pink flowers, little blue flowers.
Yeah.
See if you see hand painting. If you see or feel texture, you have a hand painted piece.
So that the my mother-in-law gave me the other day, and the other day, like 6 months ago, a bracelet that her ex-husband, my husband's father, had given to her when she gave birth to my husband.
Oh, nice.
And it's so nice. And it's real, it's solid 14 karat gold that's hand etched, and you could tell it's hand etched
Oh, nice.
all the way around because it looks like someone by hand.
Right.
It's clearly by hand.
Right.
And I would never part with it because I love it and it's sentimental and I love it. But that's one way you can ascertain value of things when they're old plus sort of hand
Yeah,
finished.
that doesn't mean that a machine-made piece that's vintage or antique is not valuable. But basically, if you can actually see, and we know what happens with the human hand, we're not like machines, so it's not
Right.
all perfect.
Correct.
That imperfection is really what people look for.
Yeah.
And again, it's difficult and expensive to make. It's labor intensive.
Yeah, it's
is when they
beautiful.
say,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I'm sure it's beautiful. And again, the sentimentality just adds more value.
Right. It adds more value also to you. Right. It's precious. It becomes precious. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's
Exactly.
something
Exactly.
that I will pass along to my daughter for sure one day. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
not for many, 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 many years to
That's
come.
right. You've got to
But
enjoy that for a long time, Jen.
yeah, that's the ongoing anything I have. That's the ongoing joke with my daughter, and my son is just out of luck when it comes to anything jewelry wise. So that's fine.
Right. Right. And then with jewelry, you want to look for the marks, the fineness
Right.
mark, like 14K or 18K.
Yes.
A maker's mark is always helpful.
Right.
Or a distributor's mark, like a Tiffany and Company mark, a distributor's mark too. Yep.
Okay. And then glassware, the same thing, right? Because glassware you could have all sorts of crystal companies, right? I'm
Right.
trying to Lalique.
Like the Lalique on the table
Yeah.
here, that kind of thing. So yeah, or Baccarat, or
Yeah.
the big names. But you might have a piece of Indiana glass, or or a piece of Fenton glass, and it might not be marked. It might be
Yes.
marked, but it might not be marked. If it's not marked, you want to go by the pattern.
Okay.
And you were talking about Martha Stewart's pieces, then the weightiness of
Yes.
it.
Yes.
That's going to be a telltale sign too.
Okay. Dr. Laurie V. And by the way, you can go to drlaurie.com. That's the website, right?
Yep, that's
And
the
it's
website.
LORI. And also on Facebook, you're at Dr. Laurie V. And people love you. You have such an active following. People are very engaged with what you do because you're charming. And you're knowledgeable and charming is like a winning combination. Like those two things together. Wait, is that Humpty Dumpty? So I'm looking, we're on video, even though you're hearing the audio version of this, I'm going to post the video somewhere, but is that like a Humpty Dumpty? Who is that sitting on the
That's a Humpty
That is Humpty
Dumpty
Dumpty.
1950s era cookie jar. And Humpty Dumpty's here. And then a couple of other things are on my table. A maquette of the Irish Memorial Monument, which
Yeah.
is the large public sculpture by Glenna Goodacre. I was the project art historian. It's at
Wow.
Penn's Landing in Philadelphia. So a maquette there, which raises money for public sculpture. It's important to support the arts. And then a Beanie Baby and a couple of my books and some other pieces. But basically, what I always talk to people about is the stuff that they've just been walking by. So if it's a carpet, like a rug in your house, or maybe it's a print that's always been on the wall, or that 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 pitcher,
Yeah.
that lemonade pitcher in
Yeah.
the cupboard. You go, we only use this in the summertime, kind of thing. And this just sits there, and year after year and day after day, you just go by it and you think it can't possibly be valuable. I want to teach people how to understand that value. I do it through video calls, right? People
Yes.
do video calls with me.
Yeah, so talk about this because it's really cool because I had asked you about one print and you were so funny. You were like, hold on to that. We're not going to sell that yet. It's not the time. I was like, okay, it's staying on the wall. And yeah, and then I thought of all these other things and I'm going to do a call with you again. But it's amazing that you have all this knowledge in your head, that you see something and you could from the jump be like, you know what? That's this, that's that. Because I'm like, wait, how do you know?
Well, how do we know? I do it a lot,
Right.
that's first, The other thing is you have to keep current in the market because the
Right.
markets will change. And
Sure.
that's why I said that I gave you that piece of advice, like, wait a minute, we don't want to sell it now because the market is not great now. There's not a lot of money, extra
In
money in
right.
the market for these collectibles and such. That doesn't mean it won't go back up. That just means we've got a holding pattern.
Right.
It's also a good time to source, right? So I say, this is your time to buy if you're a collector. This is your time to buy if you say, hey, I may want to resell this stuff, or if you just want to keep it for yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to think about too. There are other opportunities, even though we're saying, oh, I can't sell it right now. And then certain markets have been flooded as a result of the pandemic. The
Yes.
pandemic, we had everybody in lockdown. What were we doing? Cleaning out attics, cleaning out basements. We're stuck in our houses. We're with our stuff. So that's why all these Beanie Babies showed up on the market.
Yep.
So of course, everybody's going, gee, can they be valuable? Well, they were a little more valuable some years ago.
Right. What about
Before
Cabbage Patch Kids, the original?
Cabbage Patch Kids, the original, are coming back strong too. Actually, I just appraised one that had the Olympic outfit on, from the 1996. Now that's 20 years later from Cabbage Patch, because Cabbage Patch starts, into the latter part of the 20th century. So you're going to see again these types of pieces coming out. So yes, these vintage dolls, American Girl dolls, which are not that old, but
No.
they have significant value. The
They
Samantha
do?
doll and the
Okay.
Molly doll.
What about
Yeah.
the Jewish one? I have the one I'm Jewish, so I have the one, the
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Rebecca, right.
So I have her in the
Rebecca.
box. She's still in the box. I never opened her.
Oh, that's wonderful that she's still in the box.
Yeah.
So you could be just hovering around $1,000, $1,100
So
in the
funny.
box.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I bought it for my daughter who never liked dolls. I loved Hello Kitty. I begged her to like Hello Kitty. She didn't like Hello Kitty. I have a collection in my house
Well, she
somewhere
has
of
to
Hello
go
Kitty.
back to Tokyo,
I
because
know.
when you're in Tokyo, you just fall in love with Hello Kitty.
There was actually just somebody had sent this to me. The founder of Sanrio did a whole thing about the Hello Kitty, what Hello Kitty means, and what Hello Kitty's messaging is, and it's fascinating. I got to pull it up because there's a whole. I never knew that Hello Kitty had a sort of a meaning, that there was intention in the fact that she had no mouth.
Right.
She just had the bow. I'm
Right.
gonna pull this up because it's pretty wild. Okay, so his name is Suji. I think that's how it's pronounced. And he said that Hello Kitty had, because I was a big from the time I was 10, 11 years old, that Hello Kitty had 3 messages. The first one is you should be loved, and you need to be nice to others to be loved. The second one is human connections, and the third one is that having no mouth means we need to express with our actions, not only by words. That's how we have to express ourselves.
And what's interesting
Who
about
knew?
that is what
Yeah.
it says about Japanese culture. And that's the value. That's where value comes in any object. So people will say, well, what's valuable, Dr. Laurie? Well, what's valuable is if it relates to history and if the object relates to culture, then that object has significant value monetarily and
Yep.
culturally.
Dr.
So,
Yeah.
that's
Dr.
what we
Laurie
see.
V, what about a collection versus a one-off piece of something?
Anytime you build a collection, you increase the value a little bit of all the pieces in the collection. So I was going to ask you, like your Hello Kitty collection or any
Yes.
collections that you
Yes.
might have, it's good to keep growing that collection. And it doesn't have to be specific. It could be, a more broader collection. I always say, think about museum exhibitions. You go into a museum exhibition, as a former museum director, we'd give you a title, Monet's landscapes.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you're walking in there, you're not going to see any portraits.
Right.
The idea that you will have, again, this notion of here's the umbrella idea or theme is what you're looking for. And when you build your own collections, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to have somebody walk into your home and say, oh, I understand why somebody like Jenny would be collecting Hello Kitty because of the elements that you just pointed out. Those things are important to you, and they become important as why you're connecting with Hello Kitty.
Right. And because I seem to always need to be in touch with my inner child, I am just
there you go.
a mess. Yeah. So for somebody listening, they're in their house and they're saying, okay, I'm going to tackle a project of seeing what might have value in my house. First, we sort into like textiles or fabrics or paintings or artwork or sculpture or statue or china. How do we sort initially?
Okay. So a couple of things I always say. Those things that are extremely important to you or your family should be put aside. Doesn't matter about value. If that's a sentimental thing and it's important to you, go from there. Because most people start this sorting at times of turmoil. Someone's passed, you're downsizing and leaving your home for some other reason, or you have a divorce or some other problem. Okay, fine. So it's difficult because objects carry emotions.
They do.
So we want you to think about those items that you say, I can't part with this. I don't care. I'm not listening to anybody. I'm not parting with this. Okay, fine. Other objects, if you can do it by category, it's easier. So all the china, all the glassware, all the paintings, all the prints, all the whatever. And you do it by in that way, textiles and such. And remember, some of these things you might say, I don't really, I want to sell this piece or I want to hand this piece down. That's all fine. So first you do have to sort. Look for condition first. If it's in really bad shape and you don't think you want to invest in restoring it, that might be the first piece that you say, okay, I'm going to put this aside.
Okay.
As opposed to holding on to it.
Right.
In terms of value, I want you to look for brand names. Oh, brand names. Yeah. Limoges, Monet, Kleenex. I don't care who it is.
Right.
But brand names are going to be important. Marks and signatures are important, but they're not the only thing. Okay. And then you want to also look at anything that relates to history or culture. So Humpty Dumpty, the cookie jar over here, relates specifically to post-war American culture because after World War II, into the late 1940s and 1950s, the baby boom was happening. We had more cookies, we had more children, and cookie jars become the rage. Cookie jars become the rage again in the late 1980s when the big auction houses have a big auction of Andy Warhol's cookie jar collection, and all the collectors go, oh, if Andy Warhol can do it, then we can do it. Cultural icon and his collections. This is why Martha Stewart's yard sale was so important.
Yes.
Okay? Same type of thing. Who wouldn't want a piece of jadeite from Martha's house?
Yeah, everyone wants that. Everyone needs that. Everybody wants that.
When you're looking at objects, you want to look for quality. You want to see how it relates to culture, right? And then you also want to remember about your sentimentality.
Right, because you don't want to part with something just because you might make $1.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. And you don't want to do that just to make room or space. Oh, I have to make space. Okay, but if you get rid of something that you really love, your beloved great-grandmother's quilt, just because you don't like quilts, right? Okay, you might feel bad about that. But I'm not saying save everything. I'm saying let's identify quality.
It's interesting because that whole save everything mentality, I think years past, a lot of us were sort of, I wouldn't say hoarders, but we thought we should save. And I think now people are cleaning and trying to sort of not save. So now let's say we go through our stuff and we think, I want to unload, offload, let go.
Right.
How do we find where to let it go? How do we sell things? How do we figure out reputable places? Is it only the big auction houses? Are there reputable sort of independent sellers and buyers as well?
Sure, there are. I mean, there are a lot of places that you say, okay, this is appropriate for a big auction house, but you also might say to yourself, I can do this myself. I teach a lot of people how to sell their stuff,
Oh,
right? I have
wow. Yeah.
classes and the rest of this stuff, my YouTube channel. But basically, where people will say, okay, what do I do? A lot of people do it what you've done, which is have a video call. So
Sure.
you know which pieces are going to be valuable, and you know that those are of really high value are probably not appropriate for, oh, I'm going to just sell this on eBay as
Or
a side
Poshmark.
hustle
Right,
kind of
right,
thing, right.
right.
And then you're also going to say, all right, maybe the costume jewelry will sell better on Poshmark than it might on eBay, or maybe it sells better on Etsy than it does on, Cherish, right? Which is the vintage furniture platform that a lot of people like.
Oh, so that's better than like an app deco?
Well, it's not that it's better, it's a little bit different. Okay. So now we have to categorize the pieces by again platform. This isn't that hard, but don't expect to do this. I always say to people, you've amassed all this stuff over a lifetime. Don't expect to get rid of it in a week.
Yeah, but it just gets confusing because, like, eventually my husband and I want to move. So we're figuring all this out. And I
Right.
look at these Drucker chairs I've had in my kitchen forever. And they
Okay.
were from the original, wherever the original Drucker chairs were made, these are them. And we got them in the design center in New York City, and they're lovely. We have a huge set of them. I
Right.
can't stand them anymore. And
Okay.
right.
Well, you've grown out of them, and that
Yeah,
happens.
they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
I
I have
love
furniture in my home that I've grown out of too.
Sure.
So you might say Kayo, or you might say eBay, or you might do eBay with a local pickup, or you might do
Right.
Cherish, or you
Okay.
might say, you know what? I don't want to lift them one more time. I'm calling the
Correct.
local estate folks and let them do them at auction.
Okay.
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 So,
Mhm.
but you want to think about those types of things, and you want to make sure that you have an appraisal with a comp, right? With a comparable sales record that's recent, so you know what they're worth now.
Right.
And that's what I do.
It's
So
so worth it too because your price, like, and again, I spoke to Lori professionally once, and I was so impressed with you because you weren't wasting my time. You knew what you were doing. It was all fast. It was just great. Like, I just felt like you actually really knew, and that made sense to me because I was like, all right, I don't have to think about this again because it's staying on my wall, or I don't have to think about this again because this is that. It was great, and it's worth it because if you talk to someone for 30 minutes and it's a couple $100 or whatever, and then they sell something for $800 because they spoke to you, they've just made $600
well, yes. I mean, many people do
essentially.
benefit from it. And really, it grows out of our now new comfort level with video conferencing because
Right.
everybody's doing
Love
podcasts, and
it.
many people are of course talking through video. A lot of folks during the pandemic couldn't get to see their kids or grandkids, so they're learning Zoom, and they're learning of kind of the live streams and this kind of stuff. So that's been very, very helpful. And I think a lot of people are realizing, hey, Lori doesn't have a dog in the hunt. She doesn't want to buy the stuff from me for free
Right.
and then resell it to one of her other clients.
Right.
She wants to tell me so I can benefit. And
Right.
that's the way I've run this for 25 years now. I don't
So
do that.
good. Yeah.
But that's my opinion, that's my approach, that's what I do as an appraiser. I think folks can really do well if they take the time, even if it's a short 10-minute call. They take the time to just go, okay, I need to have these 3 questions answered, or I need a half an hour to walk around my house with my cell phone on FaceTime or Zoom. And it's very easy to do. What I think is great is when you sit there and say, okay, I now understand that some of the stuff that I've just been walking by that I don't really care about anymore, maybe that can do better if I am to sell it and then put that money toward, I don't know, a vacation with my kids or
Whatever it
something else,
is. Yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah.
What are we looking for marks wise with furniture?
Well, you're typically, I mean, with
And where do we
contemporary.
find it? Where do we find the marks on the
Okay, well,
furniture?
you got to turn it over. You got to get somebody who's got the muscles, right?
Okay.
You got
Upside
to
down.
turn, yeah, you got to turn it over. If it might be something that has a like a cushion that gets removed, sometimes it's right there in that area of the stretcher areas of the pieces.
Okay.
Sometimes with furniture, it is not marked. Sometimes they're on labels. Those labels get lost. The Haywood Wakefield pieces that have a very prominent logo. It looks like a branded logo on the side
Okay.
of a drawer. If you're opening chests of drawers, it's usually on the inside of the drawers.
Okay.
You can look there. for a lot of the mid-century modern stuff. But basically, you're going to be able to find it. And if it's in good condition, oftentimes good quality pieces will stand the test of time.
Right. And
there's a market for so much of this stuff. And one of the markets that people don't realize, for those pieces that might be, that might have been loved, I'll say it that way, not
yeah,
in the best of shape,
gently
is, of course,
loved.
the
Yeah. Or well
DIYers.
loved. Yeah.
Yeah, what? Right. Are the folks who are doing repurposing. They're very
Mm,
talented and they do
mm,
beautiful work. And
mm.
sometimes they need that stuff.
Right, right. Often we see that on TikTok all the time. People resurfacing and
Right.
repurposing old chested drawers, and they come out just gorgeous. And they
Gorgeous.
picked it up at a flea market or
Right,
whatever
right,
on the side
right.
of the road. Okay, so
So
furniture inside or underneath or under a cushion, under the whole thing or under a cushion.
that's right, or in the
Okay.
back. But be careful. But most of the time, you can find a mark, some kind of identifier, and most of the stuff that we're seeing now. Granted, if you have a original 1815 Duncan Fife, you have to be schooled in understanding how a Duncan Fife piece of furniture, an original, not a repro,
Sure.
is actually marked. So, okay, I could help you with something like that, but those are few and far between.
Right, right. And then again back to the reselling, I guess what you said, find a comp. Look online, find a comp.
Make sure that you're correctly analyzing the market, because here's where people get into trouble, Jenny.
Yeah.
They're looking on eBay and they're saying, I think I found a comp for my cookie jar, right? And the person on eBay doesn't know what the market is either, but they're just saying, we're just going to throw numbers around. So know your source. So that's when I say, you know what? You can send a photo to my website. We keep it very inexpensive. If it's not worth the cost of the appraisal, I'll tell you that for zero. I don't want to charge you to tell you that something is not worth the cost of what you paid for the appraisal. I think that's terrible.
I love that. Yeah.
There's that. And, at least let me put my eyes on it so you'll know. And then if it's not worth it, then figure out what you want to do with it. Keep it, donate it, whatever you want to do. But
right.
Make sure that you know who your source is. Don't just say, oh, I think I found this number that is the value of my fill in the blank cookie jar. And then you go, oh, well, that person was wrong. They don't know what they're doing. So be careful.
Okay. And some sites are more reputable than others as well.
Yeah, just like some appraisers are more reputable than others.
Right.
Sure.
No, I know you know your stuff. I'm not even.
No. I don't mean any that toward me. I just mean or toward anybody else.
No, I do mean it toward you, that you're good at your job.
All I do, I told you, all I do.
But it's a gift, because I think that your knowledge base is so vast, Laurie. Like it's really impressive.
Well, I see a lot of objects. I see a lot of objects, and I really do have the thirst for, I love the research. You don't become a PhD if you don't like the research. You got to like it.
Yes.
So,
yes.
But there's that. But yes, it's true that you really can, you can really go down these rabbit holes on the internet following folks who may or may not know.
Yeah.
So you just got to know your source. That's the only thing.
Do you recommend private brokers for selling things, or do you recommend auction houses like Sotheby's and Christie's? If, let's say, somebody comes across something real, accidentally real, which is what we hear about all the time. People are like, I was cleaning out my garage and I came across this piggy bank and found out it was from the Ming Dynasty or whatever.
Yeah, that happened.
What do you recommend their first step is with after they get the appraisal?
And okay, after they get the appraisal, so now you have a number, you know what it's worth, and you have a correct identification. That's important too. And then basically, depending on the object, either it will be, I need a big auction house and I need one with an international reach, right? So I can get it physically to that place, and they know what they're doing and have been doing it a long time. Or I want to get to a specific niche market of collectors in a group who basically will pay me more than others. That's usually more like the stamp collecting people, right?
The philatelist. Is that a philatelist, or is that this coins?
I'm terrible at those words. Yes, I think you're right.
I think philatelist is stamp. Okay. Yeah.
And it's the Philatelic Society, so that's a philatelist. I think you're right.
It's awful. Yeah.
Tough. That's a tough word. So there's that. And then there are certain things that you say to yourself, you know what, I think I can do this. And you know what has warmed my heart? I've built the confidence and given the tools to lots of people who are saying, you know what, this could change my life because I can find a different job. This is a job that I like to do. This is something I enjoy, and they're able to actually sell it with the aid of, again, some tools, some necessary.
Sure, you need it. Yeah.
But also with the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to use this computer or this cell phone that's in front of me, and I'm going to actually sell this stuff myself and bring more of the money home.
Yeah, I mean that's the fantasy, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the thing that I
Lots,
yeah.
lots of people are doing it. Lots of people are
Like
doing it.
it's,
They're
I
actually saying,
Poshmark.
hey, I'm able to identify this,
Yeah.
and Laurie's helping me to understand how I do this, learning how to negotiate, this kind of thing. And people are doing it, and they're selling this stuff for a lot more than what they're buying it for. So
Right.
it does happen. Yeah.
And what about Limoges boxes, those teeny tiny pill cases? And I don't even know what
Oh,
their intention was originally.
I,
Why do
originally
people make them?
Originally, they were for moles, moles, because you would actually have a fake mole that in the middle part of the 1700s, Madame de Pompadour and her friends in the court of Louis XV would actually put a mole on their face. That was
And
a
they put them in
fashion.
the Limoges box? Oh,
Yes,
that
it
is
was a
ridiculous and also
fashion
awesome.
statement. Fashion statement.
Wow.
But I had someone who followed my YouTube channel who bought 6 of them, and one of the 6, she bought 6 of them for $36. That's $6 each if my math still works. And they were worth several hundreds each because they were, again, that Rococo Revival French Limoges boxes with the Limoges mark
Yeah,
and the bright white Limoges clay, the
sure.
underside that you can look for.
The
You know,
underbelly.
so yeah, and but knowing what they're for makes them more interesting and
Ugh,
fun.
there's so many tchotchkes here.
And it's true because you've amassed this over a lifetime. You can't do this in a weekend. People are
Right.
like, okay, we're cleaning out the house. Get on your
Always. Me,
sweatpants.
I'm like in yesterday. Let me finish everything in
Yeah,
an
I
hour.
know, I know, I
Doesn't
know.
happen.
I'm that. I'm
Yeah.
that. Do it now.
Do it now.
Meet the goal.
Right. And there
I'm
is,
that.
and everything is slow going. And then but
Right,
right,
right.
right. But if you take the time and do it the right way, you guys, I'm telling you, you gotta, if you've never seen Dr. Laurie V, I found her through Google, and I have not found many people through Google that I was happy about meeting. No, I haven't. But I really thought that your expertise just showed, like, immediately I was like, oh, wait a minute. She really knows.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate it. As I said, it's been a labor of love and a lot of fun to hear
That's
the
what it is.
stories.
Yeah, you love
I
this
mean,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, it's cool.
Do you have a favorite thing that you have found during the years that you've kept?
I have some, well, I do have a couple of pieces of my mother's jewelry that I love because I miss her a lot.
I'm
Um,
sorry.
I do
Yeah.
have, it's very, well, everybody knows it's hard. That's
It's
very
hard when you
difficult,
lose a parent and yeah.
very hard.
Hmm.
And, but so I have a couple of those types of things. And, I have objects that relate to my scholarship. So, I mean, that's fun.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I do have at holiday time, I have a nutcracker or two that are popular that
So
I make
cool.
sure they're popular. Everybody sees them like, oh, the Santa nutcracker's out. Lori's,
Yeah.
it's holiday. But,
Yeah.
but there's lots of objects. And I do like people to understand that it could be the cookie jar or it could be, the coffee cup that your father always drank out of or whatever the heck it is. It might not have significant value monetarily, but the sentimentality is really important. You just want to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed with all these sentimental objects.
Thank you for your time. I really, again, go to drloriv.com, drloriv.com. Check out your YouTube page as well. Laurie, of course, you mentioned that. And Laurie has a Facebook page. And yeah, you're really terrific.
It's really my pleasure to be with you. You're terrific too. Thanks, Jenny.
All right. And I'm at Just Jenny Hutt on Instagram, at Jenny Hutt on TikTok and Twitter. If you like the show, please share it with your friends, rate it, download it, all the things. Thank you for listening. I'll be back tomorrow.